Hello, my name is Jason Maranto, and I created 3 of the liquid ink brushes that you're going to find within the Painter 2016 brushes library. So what I want to do is I want to come over here to my brush selector, make sure I'm in the Painter 2016 brushes, and then come down here to the liquid ink category. And the first one that I made is the Airbrush 2, which is what you should see by default. I'm also going to make sure that I have a color of black selected so that I'm going to get a mark that looks something like this. As I press harder, I'm going to get more of those droplets applied, and if I press lighter, I'm going to get less of them. And so this might be useful to you, and of course you can change the size. So if I just come over here and I change the size to say something like 60, you can see I'm going to get a much larger spray like so. And then I can also tilt my pen if I have a pen that's going to be tilt sensitive. And you can see I can actually spray out in a direction like so based on how hard I'm pressing and where I'm pressing towards, because this is based on the airbrush technology. I'm just going to reset that brush real quick, make a mark, Control A, and backspace to clear that canvas. And what I want to do is I want to talk about 2 other controls that you have over here. Now again, remember, this is my default mark for this. What I can do is I can change the size of the droplets that I'm getting with this particular airbrush by changing the feature. So if I just come over here and I change the feature up to say something like 6.2, and I just go ahead and make marks, you're going to see I get a very different looking mark based on that feature. And of course I can go higher than that, so let me just come over here and set this for say something around 16, and you can see now I'm getting something that's really clogging up, and this is taking advantage of that liquid ink category technology, which is the surface tension, where the droplets don't remain individual droplets, they actually coalesce into one surface. And this is the reason why liquid ink is so faithfully reproducing inks in the real world. Now, if I just go ahead and reset that brush real quick, make a mark, and Control A and backspace to clear that canvas, I can also control the flow. So remember, this is what I'm getting by default. So if I come over here and I reduce the flow, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be getting less of that being put out at any given time. And if I come over here and I increase the flow, you're going to see I'm getting more of that put out at any given time. So just by adjusting the size, the flow, and the feature, you can get a whole lot of different looks out of this one brush. Control A and backspace. What I want to do is I want to come down here and I want to look at the next one that I have here, which is going to be the Splattery Airbrush, which is all the way at the bottom. Now this is kind of a variation on the same idea, but here what we're doing is we're getting just a general splatter like so, and as I press harder I'm going to be getting bigger splatters. And of course when you're working with this you can also tilt it in order to sort of fling those splatters out in a direction like so. Now again, if you notice, we're working with a feature and a flow and also a size. The size is significantly larger here. But if I wanted to get more of these droplets, then the way I would do it is just like before. I would come over here to the flow, and I would increase the flow in order to get more droplets. And you can see I get more of an airbrush look now. So let me just go ahead and reset that back to its default. If I come over here and I increase the feature, then I'm going to be getting larger droplets. So let me just go ahead and show you what that looks like. So you can see that we can get all kinds of splatters from these 2 brushes together. And we can really use these to create some interesting looking splatters in liquid ink. Or if you wanted to, you could even convert these into a default layer and then select layer content in order to make this into a selection that you could then paint other media through. So I'm going to do a Control A and backspace just to clear that out. And I want to come over here and just make sure I reset that brush. Come down here and I want to look at the last one that I created, which is the Particle Crackle Airbrush. Now it says it's an airbrush, but it really isn't. You'll notice that because we do not have a flow and feature setting over here. And unfortunately for this particular brush, we're not going to be seeing the controls that would really give us a good advantage here on our property bar. So we're going to need to open up the brush engine for this. But first I want to just go ahead and show you what this brush does. So if I press harder, you can see I'm getting longer lines. If I press softer, I'm just getting kind of this grunge look here. So this could be useful for generating a grungy look like so. Or if you wanted to create something more like this, you could use this to generate some interesting sort of wiry texture. But this brush is based on particle technology. Control A and backspace. If I come over here to Window and I come down to Brush Control Panels, and I want to first come over here to Liquid Ink as the first thing that I want to look at. I want you to see here that we do not have any volume jitter or size jitter for this particular brush. If I were to come over here and set the volume jitter and size jitter all the way up, what you'll see is that I get more of a splattery type of effect. So if you were looking for kind of a splattery effect out of this brush, you could easily get it by just coming over here and changing the volume jitter and the size jitter up. I'm going to go ahead and just reset that real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and double click to collapse the liquid ink. And what I want to do is I want to come up here to Particles Common, because we're going to look at a different way that we can customize what we're going to get out of this brush. So I'll make a mark, Control A and backspace. And I'm just going to go ahead and focus on, this is my default mark. Now what's really driving this primarily is going to be the global chaos and the local chaos. If I come over here and I set the local chaos all the way down to 0%, then what you're going to see is that things don't change that much. But if I come down here and I reduce the global chaos down to something like around 17%, you see I get more of a linear type of hatching here that has a little bit of jitter to it. And that again is being driven by the global chaos. So the idea here is that if you don't want any chaos at all, you can make it into straight lines, Control A and backspace, and you can see what I mean. I can get something that's kind of a hatching tool here, and this could be useful for a different type of mark than what you would get when you have the full global chaos and the full local chaos. So the idea here is that you want to explore what the Particles Common tab is going to be giving you in terms of controls for this particular brush, because you're not going to really get much out of the damping and position jitter that you see up here for when you're working with your property bar. So I hope you enjoyed these brushes, and I hope that you enjoy the other brushes that I made in the Painter 2016 brushes library.